Welcome to In Our Community. My name is Bill Bascom. I'm fortunate to be here today with Judge Paul Bernal. Paul is the official historian for the city of San Jose. Paul's going to tell us about the California pioneers of Santa Clara County. But first, Paul, tell us a little bit about your interest in history. How did you become the official historian of the city of San Jose?
Well, that's an interesting question, Bill. I was interested in history from fourth grade forward. My fourth grade teacher taught us the California period, as you get in most fourth grade classes in California. And I started doing my family research, and then I never stopped from fourth grade, and I've been a history nerd ever since. And then when Clyde Arbuckle passed away, they were looking for a new official historian for the city of San Jose. And I was selected. I was honored to be selected, and I serve at the pleasure of the mayor.
Interesting, very interesting. Now, the California pioneers of Santa Clara County, tell us a little bit about that. How did that group get started?
So in 1875, the people who lived in Santa Clara County decided that they wanted to honor their ancestors and keep the history alive. And so they formed an organization called the California Pioneers of Santa Clara County. It was mostly people who had roots in the community, and they had annual barbecues, they had speaking, oration days, they had celebrations, and it was a rather active group for its beginnings. It started with 400. Today we still have 500 members. So it's a very vibrant organization. We have a lot of fun, and we still celebrate the history of our community.
Very interesting. And what kind of activities do the California Pioneers embark on and manage?
Well, Bill, I'm probably going to exhaust you with the names of the projects that we do, but we have quite a collection. We do furniture loaning to museums. So if you go to the Winchester Mystery House or you go to Casa Grande in Almaden, you'll see our furniture. Because we'd rather have it in places where people can enjoy it than in a warehouse. And we have the film archive, which is taking home movies that people have, and we upload it to the internet. If they're historic, then we share it with the world, basically. This here is an image of our Paulson House, which is at History San Jose. And there we have a research library. We give tours of a Victorian home to show them what it was like to live here before it was Silicon Valley. This particular image is Halloween. We do have children come to our house. It's an open house both at Halloween time and at Christmas time. And that's where we've had our home base for many years.
Now, are there other activities such as managing grave sites and tombstones?
We sure do that. So we are privileged to own a historic cemetery called the Hacienda Cemetery, which is in New Almaden, and it's on the National Register of Historic Places. It roughly has burials from 1850 to 1920. Here's an image of us restoring it. Last year we had a restoration month, and we were really happy to work with the Boy Scouts of America and our members to make sure that things that were in disrepair were fixed, and to make sure that it's enjoyable for the public. We also have the In Grave Danger program, where we find missing, lost, or stolen headstones, and we return them to their lost souls' resting place.
Excellent. Are there any historic structures that the California Pioneers have restored and maintained?
Sure. We actually own an adobe. And it's nice to say you own an adobe because there's so few of them around anymore. We have one of two adobes in San Jose. And this is an image of the Roberto adobe. It is part of two buildings that touch each other, the Roberto adobe and the Señol house. And they're both very historic because of their occupants and the meaning that it has to our community. Roberto Bellarmino was a Native American who was the person who erected this adobe for the purpose of showing residency in Willow Glen, and this is actually on Lincoln Avenue, so that he could apply for and receive a land grant from the Mexican government. And so he in fact did become emancipated. He was given that land grant. It still exists. We're so thrilled that we're turning it into a museum. It'll be opening in 2015.
When was that adobe built?
1836 to 1838.
And the structure next to it, that's the Señol house?
Yes. Antonio Señol was born in Spain. He went to France to be educated. He joined the French military and served under Napoleon's brother. And then when he joined the Merchant Marines for the French, he came through San Francisco and was very sick. They dropped him off and said, if you live, then we'll come and pick you up when we come back. And if you don't live, then you're going to die at Mission Dolores. And they asked that he be buried there. As soon as the ship set sail, he skedaddled out of there because he didn't want to go back on the ship, like so many of the people who sailed here from Europe. And he made his way to San Jose, and he is the person who owned that property second. And he built that structure in 1847. It was the first brick building to be completed in California.
And how did the California pioneers end up with this structure?
It's a good question, because it went through many hands, and we're fortunate that it wasn't destroyed over the years. And one family, the Basunis, lived there for 62 years, and then it came into the possession of a family named Brazzoni. And the Brazzonis built it to be not only a museum quality in 1975, but to generate income for them as a rental, and it was a law office for about 35 years. And then just about a year and a half ago, the three siblings of the Brazzoni family who owned it indicated that they wanted to donate it to a historic organization that was viable and could best serve the community with a museum. And they came to us, and we were very grateful to the Brazzonis for that donation.
Excellent. And now the California Pioneers will maintain it as a museum. Is that the plan for the future?
That's right. We are going to showcase the 5 eras of California, and particularly how Willow Glen and Santa Clara County was viewed through the eyes of the people who lived at that site. So we're going to cover the Native American period, the Spanish period. This was part of Spain at one time. The Mexican period, the early American period, which was the gold rush forward, and then the modern American period, which is incorporation of cities, the arrival of IBM and Silicon Valley, up to today.
And we have pictures of the Adobe and Señol house. Could you explain or describe the pictures to some extent? I have the 5th picture. Could you explain a little bit about that, the background of the...
Sure. That is a historic photo of the building when it would have been owned by the Basunis. And for people's orientation, this is at 770 Lincoln Avenue, right where 280 passes through. And interestingly, in 1966, Highway 280 was supposed to go right through this building. And a few people such as Theron Fox and Clyde Arbuckle started a grassroots organization to prevent the razing of the building. And they petitioned Caltrans and the city of San Jose to move the freeway 15 feet, which at that time would have been a Herculean effort. But they did it, and they saved that structure. Interesting.
And then the next picture, the 6th picture we have, is a current day image of the Señol house, and it's fixed up nicely.
Yes. The Brazzonis maintained it in immaculate condition. It was almost turnkey for us because everything was beautiful. They actually have cutouts in the walls and in the floors as if you would want to have in a museum, so you could show visitors, this is what it looked like before they put up the siding. This is what it looked like before the Americans added the 2nd story. And a sea captain named Stefano Splivolo added the 2nd story, and then at one point rotated the entrance of the building 180 degrees because the main road used to be Señol Road, which led down to where the Sharks Tank is today in downtown San Jose.
Okay.
And then when they built Lincoln Avenue at some later point, that became the main street, so they rotated the orientation of the house to face Lincoln Avenue.
Interesting, very interesting. And then we have the 7th picture shows the adobe next to the house. Could you
Sure.
describe that a little bit?
So this shows the adobe as it stands today, and you can see it kind of butts up against the Señol house. And that's actually about a 1.5-story structure, because as was typical of Adobe construction in the 1830s, they would have a loft area. And the family would typically sleep in that loft area, which was nothing more than a crawl space, and it was accessed from the outside. So you'd go up a staircase or a ladder to get to where you were sleeping. The bottom story was basically for eating and doing your trades and your crafts, but most Native Americans and Mexicans and Spanish people would spend from sun up to sundown outdoors, doing the chores that was required of running a rancho. And so that's why adobes are rather small, because they weren't places where people hung out like we do today. It was just a shelter from the cold.
Wonderful. And then the 8th and final photo shows a close-up of the adobe, and you can see the construction a little bit.
Yes. So the construction was done by Gil Sanchez, who is a adobe architect who specializes in adobes, and he made it seismically strong by putting rebar through the center and then putting an X-frame brace up in the attic space so that there would be no lateral movement in case of an earthquake. And then you just saw the horno on the outside, which is an oven, which would have been used by both the Spanish and the Mexican eras. They taught the Native Americans how to cook using a horno.
Excellent. Thanks, Paul. Now, let's focus a little bit on the film archive that's managed by the California Pioneers. We have a short film clip to show, and could you describe it a little bit and how people would submit their own videos to your service?
I would love to, Bill. So the film archive is something we're very proud of. As a matter of fact, the California Conference of Historical Associations has indicated that we are the best film archive program in California, and it was the thought of a young member of our organization named Bill Foley, and Bill said we ought to get all the home films, which most people think are sort of mundane, but in fact they are little gems of history of our local community. And because they are being deteriorated at such a quick pace, why don't we take those films? Why don't we provide a service where we will digitize them, and we digitize at 1080 HD, which is 4 times higher quality than you get from a standard television set. And then we will not only preserve them, but we give the family a CD digitized in high definition. We take the film if they'd like, and we put it into a archivally safe facility that we maintain. And then we upload images to the internet. And we've had great success at people visiting our Pioneer Films archive, which you can access from YouTube. And it is very indicative of the kinds of things that people wanted to film from their home cameras from the time that movies were invented until the present. And this, what you're seeing right here, is called San Jose 1951. And if you go to the website, you can see things such as beauty contests, the opening of Highway 17, the building of the Bay Bridge and the San Francisco Bridge, President Nixon, President Kennedy, anything that had to do with people taking home movies in Santa Clara County, we're interested in. And so if people have movies that they would like preserved for their own families so they can share with their grandchildren before they are totally eroded, we're happy to provide that service. And if it is a nature or a quality of significance that we would like to share with the world, we upload it to our website.
Excellent. Thanks, Paul. And then we'll finish with how do people get to your website? What is the web address?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to www.californiapioneers.com. Pretty simple, right? So we keep it simple. It's a one-stop shop. You can go there, and from that site you can either go to the history calendar, which is all history events in Santa Clara County. You can go to our film archive. You can see the projects that we do. You can join us for our luncheons.
Excellent. Thank you. Very interesting, Paul. Thanks for being in our community today.
You're welcome, Bill.
Okay, hopefully the flow went nicely.
Thank you. Oh.
Welcome to In Our Community. My name is Bill Bascom. I'm fortunate to be here today with Suzanne Barnett, an independent TV producer here at KMVT. It's a bit of a role reversal because Suzanne is normally interviewing people. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Suzanne with great pleasure. Suzanne, how did you become a TV producer?
Well, this happens to be my 23rd year anniversary of my very beginning of TV. I started at Foothill College in 1989, and it was because of the earthquake. I had a lot of damage. I lived in Los Altos Hills, and I decided that I would take the broken pieces, my house was just in shambles, and turn it into art. And I found out that there was public access at Foothill College, which was only 5 minutes from me, and I started doing, I was going to do 2 shows, and since I'm such a ham, I went crazy over it. I just loved it so much, but the first show I showed how to fix a broken piece of something, you know, I had a hot glue gun. And then the second show, I used to paint shoes and clothes, and I had some models, and I, demonstrated it, and then it was all over, and I was absolutely devastated. But being the ham, loving what happened on the 2 shows, I was a wreck, but I just loved it. I thought that I would start interviewing other artists, and that's how it started. I've done about 1,200 shows in 23 years.
Wow, that's
so that's how it started, and I'm still a wreck.
You're doing great. This is wonderful.
No, but I don't, I'm not used to being the interviewee.
But you have a fascinating story to tell.
Thank you.
So did you have a name of the show, that original show?
Yeah, it was called Suzanne Studio. And then I did another show called In Our Community. I used to have a 4-hour segment, and I would interview, I would have at least 2 shows. I just loved it, but I worked very hard. It was worth it. Now, when I interview, it's so much easier because I just usually do, one-on-one, like what you're doing.
Is it because of your experience that it's easier now?
That's such a good question. I don't know. I think sometimes it's better to be spontaneous and to be fresh. Here's what I used to do, which I don't recommend. That's why I'm going to tell you. I used to memorize a 30-second opening. I would meet my guest at least 2 weeks before. And I scripted the whole thing. I had every question written out, and I never, I did a few times, but I didn't like to refer to my notes, so I would have to memorize. I'm not good at memorizing. But now I'm very freewheeling. I'd rather not know, you have to have the background of the person, but then if you can just let your creativity come out, hopefully.
Have you had any unexpected surprises from being free-flowing?
Of course. I've had people not show up. In all the shows that I've done, that only happened a few times. And what happened was that I would interview one of the crew, and so that was really fun. But that didn't happen at the beginning. Otherwise, I'd be in the sanitarium, because I was so totally serious about it. I'm still serious, but it's different.
Have you had any favorite guests, any people you've interviewed that you really enjoyed?
I interviewed this Russian healer, and he was from Russia. I have never met anybody like him. He could change people's brains. He was very famous, and but most people, didn't believe that he was successful. But what he would do, he'd never touch you, but he would use his hands, and he could see through your body, you know, supposedly, and he would remove whatever and replace it psychically.
Oh, that's amazing.
And he
stands out.
demonstrated, we had a video about how he changed a lady's brain. And he did it layer by layer. Excuse me. And he said if there was ever anything that I needed change. So I asked him if he would change my brain. He usually charged $10,000, but because I had him on the show like 4 different times, everything was free. And this is so interesting. He said, why did I want to change my brain? And I said, I want to be a brilliant intellectual. I said, and I want to have a really good memory. And I said, could you do that? And he said, of course I could do that. I can only do one accent. He said, you know, I had a really hard time understanding his Russian accent. So he said, I just want to, I mean, I wouldn't have done it, I'm sure. I mean, I would have liked that to happen. But then he said, but do you know something? If I change your brain, that is going to change you. And how would you feel to be have a whole different mentality? I said, I'd feel great. But he didn't want to do it, no. Anyway, so he was the most interesting guest I've ever had.
Well, that's a good thing he didn't change your brain, because I think it's functioning very well as it is. It's
Thank you.
very interesting, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Have you had any guests that really open up about themselves and expose their inner thoughts?
Well, we can't do that much, Bill, in, 28 minutes, but I've had some guests who have had some horrible things happen. I had 2 servicemen who have, what is that? Syndrome. Post-traumatic, yeah.
PTSD.
Yeah. And their stories were just really very, very tragic. I mean, they came out of it, but something like that you never overcome. And then I had a woman who was going around California talking about the fact that her daughter had been bullied, and the daughter was hanging herself in the girls' bathroom.
Yeah.
And they rescued her, but her brain was completely gone. And we both cried on the show. I mean, she finally died, but I mean, she was just really a vegetable. So that, I would say that's the most dramatic one I've ever had.
Yeah, that's heart-wrenching.
But it's hard to get people sometimes to totally expose their feelings. Do you want that to happen? I mean, it depends. You're the interviewer. Do you want that to happen?
No, maybe not always. No, not if it's a deep, heartfelt problem, but that's the reason you have the person on the show, right? It's a very emotional aspect that's kind of interesting.
Well, last week I interviewed a World War II hero, and his ship sunk at Pearl Harbor, and he'd been married 68 years to his wife that he absolutely adored. He was an admiral, and guess what happened? They were having dinner one night, and she choked to death, right?
Oh, no.
Having been a very extremely well person. And she had a piece of steak. There were 2 doctors. They couldn't save her. And this happened 3 years ago. It was very difficult to interview him because I know him personally, and he's so devastated. But I was able to, we were able to talk about it. So I felt that was very successful.
How do you find the guests for your show?
Oh, that's such a good question. They appear. It's synchronicity. I used to have to, really shake the bushes to get guests, especially the first couple of years I only interviewed artists, sculptors, painters, that kind of thing. And then I branched out. So now I only want to interview eccentric people. Because I'm eccentric.
They're the most interesting. No,
No, I do.
That's great.
No, it depends. But once you get started, it's really word of mouth. One of your friends will tell you about someone who is talented in some field, and then you want to talk about it.
What's it like working here at KMVT? Do you get a lot of support?
Oh, I love KMVT. I would die without KMVT. I really would. Oh, a lot of support. I mean, it's so, the fact that we're all volunteers, and I've had my crew for a long time, and it's so wonderful that they stay with me, and I stay with them. Everybody really helps.
Yeah, that's great.
And I think that if more people who had kind of a ham instinct like I do, and as a drama person, drama queen, are you a drama king?
No, I don't think I am.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty even-keeled.
Are you sure? Really?
I don't think so. But I do like working here at KMVT. It's a fun atmosphere, and I'd like to do it a lot in the future. And getting inspiration and guidance from you is valuable.
Thank you.
And when did you move to KMVT from Foothill? How long has it been?
Oh gosh, I'm not good at numbers. It's been at least, I'd say 12 years, 10 or 12 years that I've been here. And I loved Foothill, but I love it even better here at KMVT. But I just think if we could tell the audience how wonderful it is to be here, either technically speaking or to be a producer, because it's so much fun, isn't it?
It is definitely fun, yes.
Yeah.
I enjoy the people
I'm going to
here.
interview you sometime, Bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll reverse roles once again.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have any final advice on how someone could become a TV producer?
Well, I think that first of all, they have to be interested in television, which is, so important. And it's just so much fun, and it's really helping the person. Like I'm a Democrat, but I have interviewed Republicans, and in my heart, I'm not crazy about them, but it changes you, and if they really believe in something, let them say it. And so if you feel strongly about something, this is a perfect avenue to let it out.
Well, thank you so much, Suzanne. That is great advice, and it's been fun asking you questions. You're a wonderful, wonderful interviewee.
Thank you so much. And you're a very good interviewer. And you're new to it, so keep it up, okay?
I definitely will. It's very enjoyable, especially when the guests are like you.
Thank you
again,
so
Suzanne.
much.
Suzanne Barnett.